Hi and welcome to Bite-Sized Bat Reps, where we bring you great battle reports without taking up a great deal of your time. So I've got another divisional battle report for you in the kind of Blitzy format. And this round I'm playing my Swedish division as a Holy Roman Empire division because the figs are essentially the same other than the kind of commanders and banners. And I wanted to check out how the division plays as compared to the Swedes. And then the other reason is that my opponent is playing a Swedish division, so I didn't want to have a mirror match because those are just kind of never fun. It's my opponent's first divisional game, so we're keeping it small. It's 36 versus 35 points, and I ended up with a minor delay effect for 1 point to even things out. For the build, I went with a pretty vanilla Imperial division. I don't have any named characters or any kind of special craziness, so I've got a regiment of old Imperial cuirassiers, half of them in armor, all of them veterans. I've got Imperial cuirassiers just with all arquebuses, no armor. Pretty beefy infantry regiment, not veteran. That's actually all of my infantry figs, so it's kind of fun to field them all. Small regiment of dragoons for scouting, and just 3 light artillery pieces. Now the HRE's artillery is just as good as the Swedish artillery, so it's basically best in the game, but I decided to kind of go with more punchy units and just light artillery support to keep my opponent honest. Now for the Swedish build, my opponent brought all veterans, and so there's a beefy veteran dragoon regiment which will go on reconnaissance, then two veteran Raider regiments, some of them armored, and a really sizable artillery contingent. So 1 medium gun, 4 light guns, and an ammunition wagon, which means that the artillery game will be absolutely dominated by the Swedish player. However, because of that, there's just fewer bases that he can put on the field. So this is about 2,500 versus 1,800 soldiers on the field. And to kick things off, our reconnaissance patrols are coming back. Both of them got decimated in the reconnaissance, so I guess they met up somewhere. So we've got 7 veteran Swedish dragoons coming back out of the 12. And for me, I have 4 dragoons coming back, none of them veterans out of the 8. So yeah, there you go. That's half of the dragoons are left out there scouting. Here's the deployment, and as you can see, the table is basically fairly straightforward. So we've got out of important pieces, we've got a marsh here, so that kind of anchors that flank in. We have a house on this side, so that anchors that flank in, and then hills on both sides, but this little light woods in the middle just to block some lines of sight, so this way the artillery doesn't have full run of the whole field, because that gets can be really dominating. So that's why I set it up that way. And on setup, so the Swedish player goes with a classic deployment, artillery battery on the hill with the ammunition wagon. That's, I've done this many times and it's very, very effective. So there's basically a death zone right here. This woods casts a bit of a shadow where you can't shoot behind it, but yeah, I mean, anything coming, I would say here just is going to take significant fire if it's concentrated. And then main forces on the left and the mercenaries on the right. And because he's the defender, there's no pressure for him to kind of move up, so he really wants to be fighting anywhere where these guys can provide them support. On my side, I decided to do 2 things that are kind of worth noting. So first, I double up my punching power, so all of my cuirassiers are on the left side. So this is the main force and then the new type regiment, because I want to dominate the left side and come in and basically smash through the main forces. My dragoons can support if needed, and I can keep the fight away from the deadly case shot, which is till about here, I'm guessing, somewhere there. And it's basically going to be 2 regiments on 1, so I like those odds. And on the right side, to make sure I don't get swept from the right, my infantry will form up here and basically plug this gap, supported by 2 light guns on the hill, just to pepper the enemy with some shots as needed, or take out the opposing artillery. And then the other thing that I'm doing that's I'm trying out to see how it works is I took 2 bases of cuirassiers, the veterans, and put them here because I want to place them basically here on the side. And so the idea is that if my infantry's kind of here blocking up this this path, and I've got cuirassier contingent here, then I can kind of flank charge anything that comes down at my infantry, which makes this position even more defensible, and it just costs me those extra 2 bases. Another shot at the Swedes, getting ready. And the Imperials. Really like how this infantry looks in columns. I think it's quite nice. It's too bad it still marches quite slowly, but well, such is the life of a foot-slogging soldier. All right, turn 1. So turn 1 is all about slow positioning. I think my opponent goes first, and he's not motivated to take the fight anywhere fast. So he's basically moved up just a little bit, and he's setting up. And I'm moving at speed here because I want to get to the other side and start attacking. My infantry pushes up, and yeah, the Dragoons on the Swedish side are just marching in from the side. They'll set up soon, and I put my Dragoons in the house, fully dismounted, because that regiment only has 2 breakpoints, so I don't want it to be anywhere near combat because I don't want to risk breaking it, and they're there. If things go terribly wrong, they can do something. Otherwise, they can just stay in the house. Just a nice close-up shot of the Swedish musketeers, which are about as an attachment to the division. And the murderer's row of the artillery battery. I mean, it's funny how that works. I really love setting this up on my own side and shooting at people. I like my opponent shooting at me less. I guess that's that's how these things go. And another shot of the left. Okay, so we start shooting in the defensive fire stage, and this is hilarious. So my first shot, I fire with my light gun with the major, and I put a wound on the medium gun, and I'm very happy about that. Now the medium gun has 2 wounds, so I need to do that again, but I want it out of the game, so that's great. And then in counter battery return fire, he snipes my light gun, so yeah, this guy's now just sitting on a hill, and he'll now be running down to make it to this other gun so he gets supported. But this artillery piece, I think, literally fired once this whole game, and then it's done. Yeah, so turn 2. We go with, I think Sweden moves first again. And so as you can see, they're basically waiting here. There's no reason for them to push out of this support artillery fire. That's exactly how I'd play it as well. The mercenaries are setting up here, and obviously what he wants to do is bait my guys to come this way. He can flank charge them, shoot them up, and just generally destroy this force, which is a solid plan. But what I want to counter it with is my skirmishers. So the nice thing about this light woods is that it provides a great defensive position for the skirmishers, and 6 bases of skirmishers setting up here and shooting these rapiers at close range is actually going to be problematic. So I'll see how. I'm curious about how my opponent will deal with it, but that's what I want to do, is to get rid of the support. And my infantry is now setting up into a nice battalion here, because if I don't, then these guys will just charge through and destroy them. So I need to get ready, get my pikes ready, and give them the right orders. Just a close up on this like no man's land here between the 2 monster cavalry regiments. And the right. All right, turn 3. So after movement looks like this, and I think I had to go first this time. So what I'm doing is going this way, and this is one of the things I really enjoy about divisional games more than skirmish games. That's the games have time to breathe. So with a skirmish game, turn 3, it's basically half over, and you better get going. But with divisional game, I've got time. So I need to make sure that my numerical superiority of these 2 regiments can be brought to bear at the same time, which means I need the room, so I have time, and my plan is to basically expand this way as far as I can before engaging, so I can charge from multiple directions and be far away from the artillery. And on the right side, my skirmishers occupy the forest and now start causing problems with shooting up these raiders. Here we go into the defensive and start counter marching and just, daring these raiders to come down and charge with my little cuirassier torpedo on the side, loaded and waiting. Just another shot of all of the cavalry getting ready. close-up of the infantry. One of the things I'll run into, and this happens all the time, is it's hard to maximize your firing with infantry. Like these guys will always be kind of in the way because skirmishers are great, but they take up a lot of room, and that's yeah, it's hard to set up nice firing lines. In the Swedish moves, the veteran dragoons dismount and form up here, and they'll be providing some support. But to be honest, I'm not sure why my opponent decided to do 2 lines instead of 2 blocks of 2x2. That's kind of, I think, what I would have done, which would allow him to counter march and just have more concentrated fire. But that's how it goes. These batteries move up a little bit so that they can now get into case shot range of my infantry, which is a really good plan, because if he can blow away the infantry from the forest, then that opens up the center. So so that's a good move, and I really need my guys to stick around. Yeah, because otherwise they'll just keep on shooting up these rapiers. Post firing, so a couple of things happen of note. So first, the medium gun and these light guns concentrated fire and blew away a base of my veteran cuirassiers, which isn't great. Both of the skirmishers take a bunch of losses, and they test, but they actually pass because I had enough command to kind of boost it, so good for me. And otherwise, not much happens. Oh, the other thing that's funny is that I'm now concentrating my artillery fire from these 2 pieces onto the medium gun, and so I'm using commander redirects, and I have a major reroll, and I just need 1 more wound. I just need 1 more shot to take out that medium gun and open up the center, and I just cannot get it. So we'll see how it goes, but at this point I'm a little bit worried because now I'm running out of ammunition. I don't have a wagon to refill, and I think I've got a couple of shots left with each piece, and if I can't take out the medium gun, then it's going to be tough to take the middle. Alright, turn 4. So we start positioning again on the right side. Yeah, I'm just basically pulling back a little bit from the case shot range, so I don't take the automatic morale tests. Otherwise, I'm counter marching with these and just keep on shooting up the rapiers. And in the Swedish movement phase, I get my major break because the ammunition wagon blows up. It's bound to happen at some point. You might as well get it out of the way in your first divisional game, so I think for my opponent this is great because he won't have to worry about this again. But when this piece was taking ammunition, it blew, the wagon blows up and it takes out the medium piece as well. So now this and this artillery piece have 3 ammunition each, and this one is out, which changes the whole perspective of the battlefield because there's nothing supporting the left side with artillery. And I guess that's one of the things to kind of keep in mind with the ammunition wagon is that if you have 5 artillery pieces to re-up, then the chances of failing are actually not minuscule because you just need a couple of bad rolls and it can certainly happen. But what that means is in my movement phase I was able to pull up this way even more, open up my frontage nicely, and as you can see there's now nothing that can support this side, which means I can take my superior numbers and just run them straight at the enemy. Just close up with the Swedish main forces, kind of milling about back and forth, getting ready to receive the charge. Okay, turn 5, and this is where I decide to go aggressive. It's time to basically execute on the attack plan, and so I throw charge orders on all of these guys, and they'll come storming this way. On the right side, nothing changes. I'm defending and counter marching and slowly putting wounds on these raiders, which is good because I do need to whittle them down. And the charge move, I move up with all of them. Now my opponent pulls back his raiders out of my charge range, so these 2 charges will fail, and that's something that I was pretty confident would happen because he has no incentive to engage with them right away, but I have some command, and so I'm hoping that I can boost the skill checks and pass them and keep charging. So we'll see how that goes. And the new type cuirassiers are basically attacking this isolated rapier unit. So that's the one that's holding the center and supposed to be supporting left, and so if I can get rid of him, that really helps me out. And in the defensive fire stage, I think at some point I ended up actually taking out a base. So that was huge because now there's only 3 guys, not 4, and it makes them much softer. And so, yep, so these cuirassiers make their charge. These guys fail their charge, but they pass the test, which is huge. So I keep my order, and now the main forces will have no choice but to engage me next turn, because I'm right there within 10 centimeters. And the other lucky break is the musketeers here on the defensive ended up putting 2 wounds on my guys, but that's not enough to cause a morale test, so this charge succeeds, and that's massive. Oh, the anticipation. All of this cavalry will be fighting very soon. Alright, this fight goes very well for me. So I obviously outnumber here, basically 2 to 1, because I've got 6 guys on 3. So I do quite well, and I break them and then run into the musketeers and break them as well. So the result is like this, with the musketeers fleeing and the rapiers fleeing, and the rapiers flee through that other gun here. So at this point there's only 1 artillery piece left on the far side of the hill, and I'm in a very good position because I basically broke through the center. And end of turn looks like this, with my main force threatening the rapiers here. I've got the center. These guys are kind of out of position, and my infantry is holding that side in check and putting continuous fire on them. Turn 6, so I keep my aggressiveness and I want to charge with kind of everything. And so what I decide to do is, the way the lines of sight work is, I want to take these guys here and I want to take these guys here and make sure that this combat goes my way. So let's see how it ended up. And the Swedish player actually, I think, got the initiative. So he forced me to countercharge because he charged with his main force, and so now he's got massive numerical superiority, but that's okay because I've got more troops coming. And in my charge, I connect here. These guys make their way here, and this is a really fun, epic moment. So these cuirassiers get into the flank, and this gun, this heroic gun with his last ammunition shot, turns around, puts 1 case shot into the cuirassiers, causes a wound, and they withdraw disorganized. So this rapier regiment has been saved by that die roll, and this dragoon regiment has also been saved by the die roll, because I would have probably been able to overrun and kind of sweep out this flank. So this is a huge coup for the Swedish defense. Yay, artillery. Alright, and now we come to this monster engagement, and I think this is actually the biggest single combat I've had in this game so far. We've got, if you translate it to kind of the men per figures, we've got about I think something like 800 cuirassiers versus about 600 or 700 rapiers. Massive swirling melee. I've got a flank charge here, and it's going to be messy. And the way it plays out is very interesting. So this block of rapiers takes a lot of shots on the charge, including a bunch of flank shots, and they end up losing a base, getting disorganized, can't withdraw, so they flee, and they flee through their own guys, but these rapiers stick. However, because this unit is now gone, these 2 units are no longer in combat, so now it's this cuirassier block versus these rapiers. So now these guys are suddenly outnumbered and no flank. However, the dice are in my favor again, and we end up drawing. So I lose a base, but I end up doing enough wounds to basically draw, and we both withdraw in good order. And that's huge, because if this side won, then he would have gone behind my lines, and it would have been a very interesting situation for me. But the way it worked out is just a straightforward kind of pushback. Here, these guys pursue, and they end up getting into the flank of the armored raiders. But this isn't a combat that they can win. I shouldn't have pursued. I kind of forgot that you can actually choose not to pursue, I think, in the second round, and so but they do, and they get beaten back because they're outnumbered, and yeah, they score no hits, and then they flee back through my own guys. And on the right side, I actually end up wasting another base of these guys. So you notice that there's only 3 raiders here with the commander. There used to be 6. So this is very important. So I mean, all of this concentrated musket fire with the light gun shooting the occasional shot. Or actually, no, the gun probably wasn't because you couldn't see it. But yeah, just these guys. It eventually ended up causing the wounds. And this is one of those times where the Swedish side really gets punished by the special rules. So the small companies comes into play quite a bit. When you make a lot of armor saves, those 10s come up very often, and then suddenly what's 1 wound becomes 2 wounds, and now a base disappears because maybe it had a wound, and then it becomes even more punishing. So the fact that the Holy Roman Empire side has the large staff, so they can reroll reorganization tests, and for example, this Cuirassier squad will take advantage of that, and those wounds will disappear beginning of next turn. But the Swedish player also gets hammered by the zeros. It makes it really tough. However, end of the turn, my new type Cuirassiers have reached their breaking point just barely, and they test and they get an 8, and so they're gone. First regiment to get wiped out. Not to be outdone, the Swedish mercenaries are also done. They've also seen enough, and they're also wiped out. So, end of the turn, full game looks like this, with this side now kind of open, and all you have on this side is the Dragoons. And I'm just going to keep the fire up, so this side is fine, and these main forces have no support. Turn 7. We're going into the kind of the final mop-up stages, so Sweden goes first, which is terribly important, otherwise they would have gotten flank charge here, and so they charge, I counter-charge, and we set up with this final melee. This is what it looks like, and I mean, both of these are really, really heavily in my favor because I outnumber, and otherwise both units are essentially identical, so pending any kind of dice disasters, they should be fine. Now the one time that this is where my Swedish opponent actually is quite unlucky again, where these guys do have flank supporting fire, and I think they whiff every single roll. So that's yeah. I mean, good, because this could have easily stripped a base with their close range musket fire, but nope, they do nothing, and the raiders are on their own. And the combat goes kind of yeah, as I said. So this unit gets broken, this unit gets pushed back, and then disorganized second round, and there you go. And on the right side, we just keep on exchanging fire. However, the one thing I did decide to do is put a move order on my skirmishers, and now that there is no cavalry threat, I get them out of the forest and I start moving them this way so I can circle around the Dragoons and start putting flank pressure on them and force them to react. And turn 8 begins like this, and at this point, it's last turn of the game and it's kind of mop up, so I decide to get all of these guys on the attack again and wipe out the main force because I can, and that's worth a lot of points. And here I'll just keep on circling, and this regiment is actually very close to breaking. I think it's 1 point away, just with all of the losses of the rest of the army. So all I need to do is kill 1 base, and they'll be testing. And yeah, this Sweden's last line of defense. Hardened veterans who've seen it all and are keeping this flank. All right, these combats, yeah, I mean, the poor rangers don't have a chance just with all the numbers against them, and yeah, these guys flee, these guys and also flee, and so the main force has been basically shattered and pushed back. And on this side, the Dragoons are forced to kind of pull back to not get outflanked by my skirmishers. They do lose a base, so now this regiment is testing. but it passes on a 2, so they stick and they are not wiped out. So the final regiment for the Swedish army is staying on the field. And there you go. That's the end of the game. Just the last couple of shots. So this is the Imperial Infantry. I think I lost 2 bases throughout the whole game, so they are essentially unscathed, and they did exactly what I needed them to do, which is basically they plugged up the hole, supported by these cuirassier torpedo. And the Swedish general looks on, and the Imperial general having some tea behind the light woods. So the final outcome is like so. I lost 1 regiment wiped out, and then a bunch of regiments took losses, but nothing else got wiped out or had to test. On the Swedish side, 2 regiments wiped out, and 1 regiment reached the breaking point, but did survive till the end of the game. Most of the artillery is gone, and same with the wagon. So the score, without tallying up all the points, because it was more of a fun game, obviously it's a pretty significant Holy Roman Empire victory, and that's the game. And just so a couple of final thoughts about the actual HRE army versus Swedish army, because now I've had a chance to play with both divisions. I have to say that I really like how Holy Roman Empire plays. It has some rules that are negative, like the desertion and reconnaissance penalty, but where it counts on the field, they're just all upside. You know, they have the large staff, which means they can reroll their reorganization, which is huge. They don't have the penalty of the small staff zeros. They have excellent artillery, excellent cavalry, and yeah, they just play really well. It's kind of like a Swedish division, but without the penalties. So I'll probably end up fielding them again just to see how they work against maybe different armies, but it was very interesting. Fun game overall. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time on Size Bat Reps.